The next step in the process, I'm going to look at each individual letter and try to construct it within this binding box. So for the A, the particular font that I'm using has this relationship where if I measure each one of these sections along that top line, it's almost thirds. It's not quite exactly, but I'm gonna make it approximate thirds to try to replicate this. And then from those top two lines, I'm drawing the diagonals, just like if there was a binding box around this A. Next I want to consider is where's that crossbar on the A. So if I divide this into equal sections, so it's approximately out of about like 5 equal sections or 4 equal sections, it's going to be in that bottom third, or bottom fourth, excuse me. So that will give me, to emulate that font, I'm going to put that crossbar. I want to make sure that it's horizontal. So I put my T-square against the edge. I'm sorry, I put my triangle against the edge. And I'm going to do my crossbar. Next I want to consider what's the thickness of this. So depending on, that line's going to be parallel to the one next to it. So at this stage of the game, I'm just concerned with emulating each letter as it fits into a box. What are the parts that get cut out? So here I'm making the bottom. So here I'm making the crossbeam a little bit thicker. This is going to be a learning process where you kind of have to gauge and say, does this look right? You're going to have to keep comparing back to the original source. Say, are these as thick as they need to be? I'm going to go ahead and make these a little bit wider on this A. I think that the A is a little bit chunkier than what I originally had it. Okay. Next I'm going on to the N. So if I had a rectangular box around this, I'm going to consider taking out these 2 triangles. So on this baseline, actually I'm gonna do the left upright. I'll do the right upright. And it's about the same width. So I'm just using my paper to make hash marks so that I can do comparisons of measurements. This width versus that width. I'm going to look at this again. It looks like from that top edge, so this bottom corner here, if I go up all the way to that top corner and then do from this intersection down to the bottom corner, that gives me the approximate width on that diagonal that I need. And again, it's going to be this process of making things a little bit narrower, making them a little bit wider to try to get the proportions and the sense of the letter right. You can measure and get these exactly to be the same proportions as what your original typefaces show. But part of this process is also looking and gauging to develop your sense of scale and proportion and to get a sense for the whole. Okay, I'm going back in and I'm erasing out some of these double lines. See it a little bit more clearly. I'm going to move on to the D. So with the D, I'm also constructing a rectangular box around. So where that lobe or that curve hits that far edge, it looks like it's dead center of that rectangular box. So I'm going to divide this rectangle into halves. All right, pretty close. And now I'm looking for where that curve starts to break. So it actually follows along that top line. If I divide the square into 4 sections, I can pretty much know that that curve is going from the top midpoint to the midpoint on the side, and then from this bottom midpoint up to the midpoint on the side. That's going to give me my sense of a curve. So if that curve broke higher, you would put it higher in the rectangle. If the curve breaks lower, you would put it lower in that rectangle. I'm gonna get the thickness of the back of that D. And then getting the measurement for that thickness, I make a hash mark and then I can measure the 2 parts of that D and know that that inside curve is going to have to connect. So I know that it has to go from this point through that midpoint and then up to the top point. That's going to give me my thickness for that curve on that D. Okay. One thing that's important is you're going to want to try to keep that width as it goes around to be that same distance between those 2 lines. Those lines should run equidistant from the other. And you can do periodic checks. You could do a hash mark and you could check it all the way along and make sure that you're maintaining that same thickness.